if not the weakest. Sometimes even in law, we are concerned with the most vulnerable people, the weakest people, because this is something that everyone then can do. If you target the weakest people, the people who are least capable, then everyone can do. Like, for example, one of the things which is recommended for Imam of Jama'ah, who leads the congregational prayer, is to consider the patience and the strength of the weakest members of Jama'ah. So if there are people who have pain in their back, or they cannot stand, or they have pain in knees, so Imam should observe these people. Should not say, okay, there are also young people who can stand on their feet for 1 hour. No, Imam should consider as aful ma'mumin, the weakest people who are in the congregation. But normally, whenever they legislate a law, in any legal system, if it's to be done wisely, they consider average. For example, they say, if you want to drive safely in motorway, you should not exceed 70 miles. Okay? Why? Because average drivers with average cars can drive safely up to this speed. But there may be a person who is one of the champions in car racing. If he drives 100, maybe 20 miles would be much safer than someone who doesn't have that skill and drives 60 miles. Or cars may be different. But you cannot legislate law and say, okay, we leave it to you, yourself decide. We say you must drive securely, then you decide. This is not law. Law is something which can be regulated and brings harmony. And also then you can monitor whether people have been observing the law or not. You cannot leave it to the people and say, okay, you decide. So when it comes to Islamic law, to Sharia, the people who are considered are the average people. The people who, with average amount of understanding, average amount of education, average amount of intelligence can do it. Average amount of interest in spirituality can do it. You cannot expect all people to become Salman or Abu Zar and then introduce your Sharia in the way that you produce Salman and Abu Zar. You must know that there are people who even performing, these legal, requirements like 17 rak'ah prayer in the day, for them may be difficult. So, in fiqh, what is really meant, what is really aimed at, is to tell the people that, okay, if you do these things, if you observe these things, you will be able to achieve the minimum amount of happiness and salvation. In other words, you will not be punished. You will not go to hell. You will be able to go to heaven. Okay? But if someone wants more, if someone wants to be more elevated and to go to higher levels of happiness, to be close to the prophets, imams, then it's not enough just we observe Sharia. We need something more. Okay? So, as you see, there is no way that one can think Sharia in a certain level becomes useless. This is mistake. This is a mistake that some Sufis do, not all Sufis, some Sufis. They think that Sharia is for the beginners. When you reach certain level of perfection, then you no longer need to observe Sharia. And this is wrong. Why? Because as I explained, this is the minimum requirement. And when you have the ambition for more, you must always bring the minimum. If you want to have 100, for example, books, you cannot say, okay, up to now I had 50 books. Now that I want to have 100, I remove those 50 books. I throw them away. No, you have to keep those 50 and add upon those 50 more. Or if you want to go higher on a ladder, you cannot say, okay, because I am on the second or third step, I remove and cut the first step. No, then you will collapse. So we believe Sharia is always needed. There is no doubt about it. But what we say is that you must not be only aiming at observing legal requirements. There is much more to be achieved. Just let me give you an example. From a Sharia point of view, from a legal point of view, if someone is dying because he has no food or has no water, an innocent person is dying and has no food or water, am I required to help him or not? Of course, yes. There's no doubt about it. Even if I have already paid all my religious taxes, zakat and khums and whatsoever, but still there is a person who is dying and in need of my help, I have still to help him. I cannot say, okay, I have already paid my zakat, I have already paid my khums. No. Still, I have to help this person. But what is needed from a legal point of view? What is needed is something that saves his life. It can be a little bread. It can be maybe a little fruit, some fruit. Or it can be best meal. From legal point of view, it makes no difference. You are not obliged to give him the best food. From a legal point of view, something that you can expect everyone must do is to give him something that he can save his life. But what about moral point of view? From a moral point of view, you must give him the best you can. Not just a dried piece of bread. Say, okay, by eating this he will not die, so I give him. Or, what some countries do when they want to send aid to poor countries, they send either something which is outdated or, something which is not good for their market, they send there. They say, okay, we are helping these people. But from a moral point of view, this is not accepted. What does Quran say? Quran says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You cannot achieve goodness and piety until you give to the people what you love. So if I love this food for myself, this meal for myself, if I love this, for example, kebab or, curry or masala or whatsoever, so I should give from the same thing to the person who is in need. And even more. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Not only I should give them from what I eat, I should give the better one to the person who is in need, and then myself be convinced, to eat from something which is left. Maybe then I will eat a little dried bread, because I have given the good meal to the person who is needy. And this is the concept of ithar. Ithar means to give preference to the person who is in need. And something more than this is what we have in Surah Al-Ata. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. Even nothing was left for the lady, Fatima Zahra. Not only she gave the good thing that they wanted to the other person, not only she did Isar, she did even something more. She left nothing for herself, because they had something which was enough for themselves. And they gave all of it to the people who were needy in 3 successive days. So this is akhlaq. Okay? But can you expect everyone to be like Lady Fatima Zahra? No. And if you become too ambitious in your legal system, then you end up with a law which most of the people would find it impossible for themselves. Say, oh, you expect too much from us. Even such an easy Sharia that we have, really our Sharia is not difficult. People think it's difficult, but if we really understand Sharia, Sharia is not difficult. Islamic Sharia can be practiced in all circumstances. It's not very difficult.